Welcome once again to Cinemaholics, the major motion podcast, where we talk about the biggest and best films coming to theaters and streaming online, like Peacock. From the San Francisco Bay Area, I'm John Negroni, film editor for InBetweenDrafts.com. And from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, he's not just a freelance film writer, he's also a fellow pizza-loving robot. It's Will Ashton.
What up? I'm here. I'm sleepy. I'm here to talk about a sleepy movie, but not a sleeper hit.
It wasn't a sleeper hit. I haven't even looked at the box office for the movie we're talking about, which is Five Nights at Freddy's.
I guess I should say it was a hit. At least the first weekend was.
It made $223 million at the box office on a $20 million budget. I'm looking at this for the first time, Will Ashton. You lied to me.
No, I think you misunderstood me. I say it's not a sleeper hit because this was expected among the youths.
Oh, I thought you were okay.
Yeah, I could see the wheels turning in your head a little bit and misunderstanding me. I was trying.
Yeah, the real horror wasn't this movie. It was my surprise at your statement.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, I just think it's kind of it's funny to me that I'm like, hey, we should see this Taylor Swift thing. It's going to be a big film event. You're like, yeah, no thanks. And then Freddy's. I'm like, this is going to be a big film thing. We should do this. And you're like, I guess. And then now we have this Marvel's movie that is not going to be a big film event, but you're like, whoa. We can't not review that film.
Yeah. Do I really have to explain Okay, Cinemaholics. When I start the show, I say the biggest and best films coming to theaters and streaming online.
It's now or the best, so I don't know what the...
Now, we're dealing with a bunch of movies that definitely vary in terms of pop cultural interest.
Sure.
And I would say, in that respect, Captain Marvel, the Marvels, it's a bigger deal than I think you're letting on.
I think you're living in a fantasy right now because you're not seeing how...
It's also about the conversations, Will Ashton.
Sure.
Again, we've been over this. What were we going to say about the Taylor Swift documentary? There were Taylor Swift songs. This was the production of it. It's not really cinema.
I think there's an interesting conversation there about how we never really covered a concert film. This kind of overwhelming prestige I feel like people put onto this artist now in a way that I feel like is way bigger than pretty much any other pop artist I can think of, even at a time when like boy bands and Britney Spears and what have you were
that's just pop culture talk. And that's fine. We can do that. But on Cinemaholics, that's something we do on like post pop.
Yes. You're bringing me back. Yeah, but no, I lost my train of thought. Oh, what I was gonna say is with the Marvels, the big reason I actually put my foot down not seeing is because they're making me the movie is telling me I need to watch not one but two shows that I don't care about in order to make sense of this plot. And you know what? That's my barrier for entry.
Fair enough. I'm not going to force you to watch the Marvels. You can do whatever you want. I did watch the Marvels. I reviewed it for In Between Drafts. I liked it a good bit. I thought it was quite fun, and I am going to find a way to talk about it on this show with or without you, because it's still Marvel. Marvel is still, Hollywood's premier franchise next to, I don't even know what else compares at this point, since we don't really get Star Wars movies anymore. But it's a big deal. I know a lot of people are going to be curious to hear what we say about the latest Marvel thing. That's all I'm saying. Whereas the Taylor Swift thing, I felt like I didn't have much to contribute there. And whatever. We are united though on talking about Five Nights at Freddy's,
which you were pushing back against as well, and that's the reason why I bring this up, because I think it's so funny that not only do we have a video game movie, it's a video game movie that I'm pushing for us to cover. And, I thought you'd be jumping for joy, being like, finally, I can talk video games with my pal Will. But
I've never played the game.
Nor have I.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm vaguely aware of the game. I kind of heard of it like years and years ago. Never got into it. I don't really get I get the idea. It's like Chuck E. Cheese horror. Like the animatronics like eat kids or something.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit more showbiz pizza than Chuck E. Cheese, but yeah, in that vein, yeah, basically Chuck E. Cheese.
What is showbiz pizza? What are you talking about? What?
Well, do you remember how there was? Well, actually, this might have been even before your time too, and I guess my time as well. There was, there was Showbiz Pizza, and then there was Chuck E. Cheese, and then Chuck E. Cheese dominated and like consumed Showbiz Pizza, and basically, Showbiz Pizza was kind of like a bigger thing, I think, in like the 80s.
Oh, yeah. I'm looking at images now. I remember this thing. So we had this kind of thing in my hometown, but they rebranded it. But it had the same animatronics.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there was like, but it wasn't just pizza. It was like a big ice cream thing too. I don't remember the name of it though.
Yeah, I think
definitely not Freddy's.
Yeah, I think if I recall correctly, the game creators said I think they were more inspired by Showbiz Pizza. But because Chuck E. Cheese is the dominant cultural force that it is, I think most people, including myself, are going to look at something like Five Nights at Freddy's and say, "Oh, it's like Chuck E. Cheese but evil, the movie," which sounds interesting. It's a cool premise. It took a long time though for them to make this movie.
So, as we've kind of alluded to here, yeah, we're talking about a horror movie based on the video game series, and neither of us have played, so we can't really speak to that. Scott Cawthon was the creator of the games. This movie is directed by Emma Tammi, who I don't think I'm as familiar with. Doesn't ring a bell, quite honestly.
She made a film before this. Is it called like The Woods or something along those lines? That it's like a promising debut, and I guess they saw something in that film that thought that made the producers think that she was the right person for this job. But I'm not familiar with this filmmaker before this film.
It looks like they made something called The Wind.
The Wind, that I know began with a W. Yeah.
Yeah, with Caitlin Gerard and Ashley Zuckerman. Yeah, it looks like a pretty small movie. Didn't watch this one. But yeah, this looks like a horror western to me, which, okay, so that seems to be tracking. It looks like she's also made some shorts. But anyway, so in terms of Five Nights at Freddy's, it's kind of like another way to look at the premise, I think, is Night at the Museum, but like kind of with the horror Chuck E. Cheese thing too, because it's sort of like the Chuck E. Cheese place kind of comes to life at night, and it's a bumbling security guard, with a kid, right? Josh Hutcherson is the main guy here. Not a lot of like super recognizable like stars. The young kid is played by Pippa Rubio, who has been on like one or two other things, and then Elizabeth Lail, people might recognize from that show You, which I don't think you ever got into that Netflix TV show.
No, pretty popular. I remember you telling me about it. Is that show still on? That end recently?
It just aired its fourth season, and it's a good show. It's definitely like pulpy, trashy, in a fun way, I think. And it's a Penn Badgley and Elizabeth Lail, main character early on in the show, and so she pops up here and there. But yeah, anyway, so also Matthew Lillard kind of shows him here. Wasn't expecting him, and best of all, Freddy. Got to see Freddy and Chica, Foxy, the whole gang.
Yep.
So all the buds. So as you were kind of alluding, this is a movie they've been trying to make since I think like the game basically came out. Like people were like, oh yeah, let's do a film adaptation of this thing, like way back like in 2015. And it didn't.
I thought the game came out like a while back, like 2011 or something like that, maybe or sooner.
I thought it was a little bit sooner. I'd have to look it up. I thought it was like 20 teens, like later 20 teens, but I'm seeing here 2014. That track. So like literally like right after the game like came out. I think the game was kind of like a viral sensation back when things kind of still went viral. And I think that the movie was probably like a quick reaction to that. It looks like Blumhouse was kind of looking at it in 2017. Chris Columbus was attached to it at one point as a director. This thing just went through so many iterations over and over and over again. But it looks like they finally just decided, like, let's just make this thing. Like, can we just hurry up? One notable thing is that they used Jim Henson's Creature Shop to work on the animatronic characters, which I could not tell you because a lot of the time the animatronics look CG, and it was kind of weird for parts of the movie because I couldn't always tell, like, if any of it was practical, but whatever. And then, here it is now. Now, the movie itself came out. I don't think they were expecting it to do much business. They had a pretty initial kind of like box office run, and then they almost immediately put it on Peacock, the streaming service, but they put it behind the most premium like paywall. So I think you have to have like their premium plus just to stream the movie. I don't know if that changed too, if they were just like, whoa, money on the table, like we don't want everybody to just be able to watch this so easily. And so like, if I don't know if that's the case. I'm speculating.
Yeah, I mean, I think they just basically did the same thing that they did with the later two Halloween movies, which is they did like a date-to-date with Peacock and theaters. And yeah, I know it worked at least for Halloween Kills. Like I think it was able to do pretty good business in spite of being on premium Peacock. Though I think that says less about the movie itself and more that I think people just don't want to get Peacock premium. If they want to see something, they'll just rather pay whatever the ticket
go at a night out. I mean, this came out October, and it's Halloween month, and really not much competition at the box office. And if you've been looking at the Cinemaholics releases, and you heard our little diatribe earlier about Taylor Swift and all this stuff, it has been kind of like stuff's been delayed. It's been a very quiet, kind of sleepy couple months at the box office since the summer ended. And so I do think a big reason why this movie kind of had a little bit of a splash and then dipped in the second week is because people were like, oh yeah, a movie. And it's not a Martin Scorsese movie that's going to take me 2 days to watch. So there you go.
Yeah, it was definitely very front-loaded. Also, I think the fact that it came out that Halloween weekend when people would be most inclined to want to see a new horror movie. It just made sense that it was kind of front-loaded in that respect. But, I mean, this is, like I have heard of Five Nights at Freddy's. Like, I know it is like a big to-do. And it does seem to be like a much bigger thing for like Gen Z and Alpha. I mean, I can't speak for millennials and their relationship to this game and this upcoming or this new film, but I do know that it is kind of surprising how many young people, like kids, were interested in this to the point where they made it like a PG-13 film, which I don't know. I mean, I've heard the argument made that this is trying to be kind of like a gateway horror film in a way that like something like I don't know, like maybe Gremlins or like Poltergeist or something is like a way for kids or preteens to start getting into horror. I think
it has kind of the tone of those movies, to be honest.
Sure. I think I like the spirit of that maybe more than I like the actual film itself, but I don't want to jump ahead too much.
The setup here, and it's not that complicated. We kind of already gave you the basic gist, but there's this place called Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, which was like, it used to be this pretty successful like family entertainment center, and it was like super super popular in the 80s, all this stuff, right? And eventually, now it's in the present day, nobody goes anymore, but some creepy stuff happens at night. There's like a cold open with like security guard, and the animatronics are like maybe causing some mischief. What's going on there? And then we kind of cut to the like, okay, this is the part of the horror movie where we set up the boring sort of like protagonist that we got to follow, right? In this case, Josh Hutcherson kind of is a bit of a mood in this. I feel like I haven't seen the guy since the Hunger Games movies. I don't know if I'm forgetting something, but I don't think he's really been around that much in anything that I've been seeing. But regardless of that, he plays this guy. He's like he has to take care of his younger sister. He's her legal guardian, and he's having trouble making money and keeping a job because he has like this trauma of like his younger brother was kidnapped when he was a kid, and he like has an acute sensitivity to children being kidnapped. And then when his only option left to get a job and to keep his sister from being taken away and given over to his evil aunt is to get this job at the Freddy's Pizza place. as their security guard. Terrible hours, terrible pay, and high turnover rate, right? But ultimately, he decides to end up doing it, and maybe there's some stuff going on in this place that has to do with missing kids, tying directly to his own traumas. You kind of get the gist. In this movie, I went into it kind of having an idea, like that was what the premise is. I think I like kind of watched one trailer at one point, barely was paying attention, and I was like, I feel like I got it. Like I know what this movie is. I will say, Will, the movie kind of had a couple of zigs, couple of zags that I was like, oh, I didn't really think they were going to do that. But, okay, I guess if they're kind of going for the Gremlins thing, like it is being a little, it's not going to be exactly the movie it looks like on the tin, at least not yet. So also got a little bit of Small Soldiers in this here and there. But not as good. Look, I don't know what you're going to say about Small Soldiers in a few seconds, but I think that movie is quite fun and has a nice soundtrack.
I mean, that's another Joe Dante film, I think, right?
There you go.
Yeah, actually, I never saw Small Soldiers, funny enough, because the concept freaked me out as a kid, like evil Toy Story. I was just like, I was afraid. I was spooked.
I was just the right age. That's and I think you're spot on about Five Nights at Freddy's. That is a very Gen Z thing, that and like Slender Man and stuff like that. Because that was like the era of like really online, like when teenagers were on YouTube. I feel like when we were on YouTube, it was like a decade before that, like kind of into the same stuff. Whereas like for them, like, yeah, this is kind of their thing. Small Soldiers was my thing in terms of this kind of movie, I guess. And Gremlins was, the Gen X thing. So there's got to always be a cycle. Did we have a 2000s one? What was between Small Soldiers and Five Nights at Freddy? That's two decades. What did we get in the 20-teens and the 20-noughts?
It's a good question. I feel like there was something.
Yeah, it was just,
yeah.
I couldn't tell you. Wow. Let's look up Joe Dante's filmography.
I was going to say, well, Chucky would have been before that.
Yeah, Chucky was the 90s.
Yeah.
And they never really stopped with those movies.
Chucky was started in the 80s, right? But then, yeah, kind of like became more of a thing in the 90s.
Yeah, I remember Child's Play. Like those movies, I remember seeing them at the video rental store. I was there.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's something obvious that I think we're probably overlooking, but I can't think of it what it is.
We're too tired, as we've established.
Too sleepy. Like I was watching this movie.
Yeah, I mean, this is not a movie that really held my attention that firmly. I watched it. I wasn't a movie that I was kind of like, I can't wait to turn it off. But I mean, I'm not like, I've been thinking about it every day. That's for dang sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of one of those movies that's sort of doomed by its title a bit, because the stretches out over 5 days, it does kind of lose whatever sense of atmosphere it needs to build. I think it's easier to kind of contain that when you're playing a video game and like, like you have to go through the levels, and like if you die the first time and you kind of get this sense of the place and the atmosphere, I think that's easier to sustain in a game. In a movie, it's just like, okay, well, obviously nothing's going to happen the first night. Maybe some spooky stuff's going to happen the second night, but not to our main characters. Like, we really got to wait until that fifth day. And I feel like, I don't know, there are certain ways you can work around that. And certainly, I think other movies can kind of prevent that kind of rigidness and structure. But I think this one is just so beholden to just kind of like staying true to the sort of cliche story archetype, as far as like everything has to now relate to grief and trauma. And I do think there is, something a little trite about people complaining about that as much. But like even the evil Chuck E. Cheese movie can't avoid the grief and trauma of this genre. It's just a little like, like, can't we have a little fun? Like, I mean, like, this movie, I get like you can't have it like super colorful and wacky, but you can have a little bit more fun. This is like evil animatronics. You can get a little goofy.
Yeah, I do agree with you. I think that I kind of appreciate, though, like I appreciate elements of this movie, because I don't think it takes itself too seriously, and it kind of just works on a very basic level. Like, I didn't watch this, I think, in the ideal environment. I don't think this is a movie to watch alone, like by yourself. I think if I had watched this in like a packed theater, bunch of people who love themselves some, not just Five Nights at Freddy's, but some just campy, weird horror stuff, then yeah, I think, and if I was also if I was 14, I think I would have loved this. Like, I think I would have loved it and been like, okay, yeah, it's objectively bad. I love it anyway. It's got that kind of energy to it. It's not even trying.
Kind of. I don't know. I feel like I would be more forgiving if it was trying to be zanier and was like, just schlocky. Like, it's so beholden to kind of being a little bit more, like I said, rigid in tone and structure, that I feel it only hurts it because you're not really like, getting involved with it. Like when there is actual killings, like there's, we establish some pretty heavy like lambs to the slaughter here. And like that sequence gets fun because it is a little bit more goofy and playful, but it feels like a little, a little thin when it's like all, kind of sequestered to that one little scene. And then we're just going to have like, these long stretches of characters just talking and kind of showing a lot of exposition. And another big thing is, I don't know, especially as someone who's not familiar with the game, there's this weird insistence on like establishing lore and like kind of talking about things I feel like the audience is kind of supposed to be aware of and know of. And it doesn't really feel like Easter eggs. It just kind of feels like it's just kind of like nudging the audience members that are supposed to be in the know, but excluding new viewers like myself who would, want to play this game if this movie was more enticing.
Honestly, I saw after the fact that apparently there were a bunch of Easter eggs. I didn't even notice they were supposed to be Easter eggs. I kind of just assumed they were like elements of the game that were here, but I guess that didn't really bother me as much.
I will say, like kind of going to your point earlier, I did also watch this at home. I think neither of us saw this in theaters, but I did watch it with my roommate and my friend, who were both like familiar, maybe not like experts on the game, but both familiar and able to kind of explain things as they were happening and kind of point out those Easter eggs that I was referring to.
I see.
But
yeah, not my experience. I think if you just kind of watch it without really that on your brain, like I don't know, I don't think it's going to be as distracting personally.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess for me, it's more of like, I don't know. There's something that's very meticulous about kind of setting up things and establishing things that I guess the viewer, if you're familiar with the game, should already be in the know about. But like at the same time, there is something that's just kind of haphazard about the storytelling here because it is kind of, a little too, it feels like it's playing too loose with some of the aspects that, like, like we get like an extended sequence here that is kind of supposed to be goofy and silly, but it feels more jarring than like funny or like lighthearted because it just, I don't know. I never really got the sense that the movie was really leaning into those characters as well. I guess it just kind of feels like the main stars of the film, which would be these animatronics, often get pushed to the side in favor of these kind of mopey characters who, don't really keep my focus or interest or attention for too long. And I think it just kind of drags this whole thing out, especially considering that it's, about 2 hours, I think.
It was longer than I expected. It's 110 minutes, so an hour 50, not quite 2 hours, but close. I think a lot of what you're saying, I don't know. I think a lot of it is a function of the budget being a big limitation. I think like having the animatronics be more center stage. I think that they probably just didn't have a script that really supported it logistically, and B, I think that they wanted to try to like, be like, oh, but you care, like the deaths and the stakes, you really need to care. So we really got to sell this Hunger Games actor, being in this movie. And yeah, I mean, I think that that's going to have a limited effective range, but it kind of does the cheesy horror movie thing where like you're really watching it for 3 or 4 moments, not really a movie. I didn't find a lot of like super positive, feedback reviews on this one. I think that there were some that was like, 4 stars because Josh Hutcherson is hot. I'm like, okay, I'll make sure I tell Will. But this one's from Kristen R. This one was pretty reasonable. 3.5 stars.
Okay.
Kristen R said, I played the games many times and know the lore, which made this really fun. One of my main thoughts while watching, however, was that my fear stemmed from my knowledge of the game. It reminded me of the first time I played in a dark room and completely unprepared for what was about to happen. I was scared by the open door ominously looming behind Josh, and my knee-jerk reaction to the security screens was to quickly scan them. Because I played the game, I don't know how someone would appreciate the fear tension of this movie without previously playing Five Nights at Freddy's, which is why I'm only giving it 3.5 stars. But for me, it was great. So that one seems to be kind of from the perspective of somebody who played the games and just kind of like reveling in what they like about the games, I guess.
Yeah. I do need to say before I forget, I don't share your criticism of the animatronics. I thought the Jim Henson creature's design was easily probably the best thing about this movie.
I like the design. I didn't say anything about the design.
I'm sorry. Like, in addition to the design, I should also say like the characters themselves. I think I don't know. I wasn't as noticing, I guess, of the CGI that they use. I thought it was pretty nice blend, and I do think there is a fair bit of practical over CG here that feels refreshing. And it does kind of lend itself to that 80s, 90s feel I think we were referring to earlier.
This one's from Mary Kate, not to be confused with Mary Kate Olsen. Not as scared as I was hoping, but I did have a great time watching it. Also, anything with practical effects is a win for me. So thank you, Jim Henson's Creature Shop. 3 stars. So yeah, Mary Kate's on your side, Washington. And look, I'm not gonna talk smack about Jim Henson. You know me. I do have to ask. So is our good friend and fellow Jim Henson appreciator Matt Serafini? Did he watch this movie? I would like to know that. I haven't asked him.
Yeah, I didn't check in. I feel like he didn't, but I could be wrong on that one.
This is definitely his thing, or could be. I don't know for sure. How he would have, I don't know, because he's our generation. So Five Nights at Freddy's, not exactly, he might not be hip with the Gen Z kids. I don't know for sure. This one I definitely have kind of like, yes. So this one's from Massey, another 3-star. Not as bad as I thought it would be, but I needed way less story and a lot more animatronics. That's what you're saying.
Yes.
I think the thing with the story, I'm a little conflicted on it. Because it's like, well, what do you do with all the animatronics without the story behind it? Do you just kind of have like the animatronics talking to each other? Like, I bet you're nodding and being like, yes, John, like, just keep going. You're on the right track.
I don't know. I mean, like, the movie's already, like, the premise of it is silly. And, like, even the concept of the film is silly. But I feel like it takes it so seriously that, I don't know, it just seems more preposterous than if they really just went full ham. And I'm not saying they have to have like weird extended sequences where the animatronics are like plotting and scheming like that. But I don't know. I mean,
I know it's not your job. You're not the screenwriter. Yeah. I get it.
But no, I don't know. I mean, I guess the big thing would have been to introduce more scenes with Matthew Lillard, who is pretty easily, as far as like the actual actors go, the high point of the film. And the one actor who seems to be aware that like, oh, this movie about evil animatronics should be kind of fun and silly, as opposed to everyone else who's playing it pretty straight and serious.
Like, zoink, Scoob! They don't have pizza at this place.
Yeah. No, I mean, I thought, for what limited...
For people who don't know why I just did that, Matthew Lillard played Shaggy and James Gunn's Scooby Doo.
That is true. Well, he didn't direct them. That was Roger.
I know, but it's still his.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, James Gunn's Looney Tunes that he wrote. Man, I can't believe. Well, yeah.
Bummer. Anyway. I don't want to think about it.
I don't want to think about it. It's already in my head. I inceptioned it for everybody. Sorry.
All right.
Sorry,
now
everyone.
About sad stuff. You're going to bring up the Israel-Palestine conflict.
Jesus Christ. This is a 2-star from Devi. Devi said, the set design and practical effects are chef's kiss. Mwah. However, that's as far as my compliments go. The story felt unbelievably disjointed and battled between being a Five Nights at Freddy's movie and its own separate murder mystery. Vanessa was also very unnecessary, and her lines felt forced and cringe. Okay, yeah. First of all, if you couldn't tell, it definitely feels like a TikTok kind of movie. I bet it's like a big TikTok thing. Not that I use TikTok. Yeah. So Vanessa, she's the cop character that we were talking about. Elizabeth Lail before plays her. It's not. I get the function of the character. I get like why the character kind of needs to be in the movie. She does serve a point, but I get what this person is saying is like her being unnecessary. It's like, yeah, kind of. Like, I think that she kind of rounds out the cast in an interesting way, but she is so like her character. It really is just like, it's not a good performance. And I don't know if it's just the writing. I think it's a combination of things, but I do think Lail a little bit was kind of like not feeling it, like maybe regretted being cast. Maybe that's too harsh, but I did not buy for a second that she was a cop. To the point where I was just like, well, when are we going to find out that she's not really a cop? Because she does not act or operate like a police officer. And like, I don't know what was going on there.
Well, I mean, I don't blame her because like she feels like she's like kind of like a crutch to the story. Like there's no interior life to this character. It's, I mean, outside of like what we're supposed to know and what we're supposed to gather from her character, just spouting exposition from multiple long scenes, or like her later, deeper connection to this lore. It doesn't feel very enriched in character. I would not envy this acting role because it just doesn't feel, it's something that an actor can really relish.
Yeah, and I think to your point, I think it's even more pronounced when you notice that Josh Hutcherson, he's doing like the depressed, mopey performance, which is very showy. It kind of needs to be. And so like when you have these two characters in the same space and you have him just being like, I can't sleep. I care about my sister, man. And she's a little bit like, this place was really big in the 80s.
Right.
I loved coming here as a kid. Hey, look, this place is on my beat. I'm responsible for this place, partner. Like, it was a lot.
Sure. And it doesn't help that they have, such sizzling hot chemistry together. The screen's just burning alive.
Even the animatronics were like, hey, we could use some of that electricity to power us on. Yeah, send it our way. I actually thought the kid, the younger sister, she wasn't bad. Yeah, she kind of brought it. Pipper Rubio, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think the performance stood out necessarily, but I don't think she was bad.
Yeah, I think that was a case where like she wasn't given like a million things to do, but I think she kind of chewed what she was given. It's definitely a promising performance from a young actor, and I'm looking for everything I can here. Most of the other reviews, I feel like a lot of people are just saying like, it's not scary. I loved it. Like that's kind of like the mood here. It's like 2 stars. It sucks. Yeah. Go see it now.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing, right? Is that like, I feel kind of bad for the people who, are like, oh, it's a starter horror film. Like, yes, if this gets people into the genre, then God bless. But yeah, no, I feel like there are like starter horror films that people can watch that are actually kind of scary, but you can watch, them like at a younger age. Like I said, like Poltergeist or Gremlins are like really good examples of movies I think are really solid and have like scary, spooky elements to them. But, you can watch that, as an adult or as a kid, and I think get, the max impact of it. And I feel like this is more like, yeah, it's a starter film in the sense like you can kind of do this as a launching pad, but it's not very scary on its own, terms or merits. But, if it does get people interested in horror, I certainly can't complain.
Did you ever go to Chuck E. Cheese, Blashin?
Oh, sure. Yeah. You want to talk Chuck E. Cheese?
I mean, Discovery Zone. What about that place?
I don't think I've been to that one.
Okay. I don't know what the business, I don't know what's in the water over in Pennsylvania. So
sure.
I've only been a few times. I went to Chuck E. Cheese, I think like a couple times. We had birthday parties there and stuff. And they even say it's like, oh, this was big in the 80s. I feel like, yeah, this stuff was kind of on its way out in the 90s. I think like when we were growing up, it was like probably not as popular, but it was still kind of a thing. But then by the 2000s, yeah, it kind of just, people were like, forget this. Like 9/11 changed everything.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Chuck E. Cheese is still around. I think it's maybe not as popular as it was before. It's not like Toys R Us where it went the way of the dinosaur. Like I think there is a place for it in a modern society. It's just probably not the same thing as what it once was. But then again, we're two adults with no kids.
Would you ever take your kids to Chuck E. Cheese, Will Ashton?
Sure. Of course.
Okay. I'll hold you to that.
I mean, unless something like terrible happens at Chuck E. Cheese.
Well, I mean, it is possible. I watched a video less than a year ago that was sort of about like, what happened to Chuck E. Cheese over the years and stuff. And they have way fewer locations than they used to. I think that should be obvious enough. And
I mean, I think the big issue, of course, is that they changed the mascot for, Charles Entertainment Cheese to look like a nice, respectable, oversized, anamorphic rat man to now looking like a terrible disease-ridden rodent who plays the guitar and it tries to be a rebel teenager. And it's like, that's not my Chucky.
That's the thing is like, do you honestly, maybe this is the case. Maybe one of the reasons people find Five Nights at Freddy's so like, wow, like what a video game, what a kind of like aesthetic, because to them, it's not as personal. It's not as like, oh, we grew up on that stuff. Like it's more nostalgia, like the way that you and I think of things like from the 70s, from the 50s and 60s of like, wow, it's like there's something almost kind of fantastical about that time period because it's so before our time. Even though stuff like that still technically exists, you can still go to like a soda fountain if you look. But there is a quality to it, right? A whimsical quality?
I guess so. I don't know. I feel like it'd be scarier in theory for someone like us. Like if you ever go to Chuck E. Cheese and you see those very wonky animatronics and you have like the crossing thought of like, man, like what if this thing just went nuts? It was just like, like wires got crossed. I feel like if a kid now like doesn't know that, it's just like, okay, well, what if I just, run away from the animatronic? Like I don't know. It's still probably scary to them, but they don't have that nostalgia, like you're saying, that built-in relationship with like the weird, creaky animatronics at stores like, or at places like Chuck E. Cheese.
Maybe so. Let's play the Rotten Tomatoes game. This might be an interesting one. All right, we have 184 reviews from critics. What do you think the critic score is on Rotten Tomatoes right now?
It's probably in the 30-40 range. I'm going to say 38%.
Not bad. 30%, a bit lower.
Okay.
And I didn't review this one. I couldn't find somebody who wanted to review it for in between drafts. That tells you something. And I was like, oh well, I guess I feel like it would have done really good numbers on in between drafts though, because we definitely have some younger readers. Okay, what about the audience score, Will Ashton? We have 1,000 plus verified ratings. What do we got?
Probably more forgiving, maybe like a 69%.
Nice, but no, not nice enough. Will Ashton, it's an 87%.
Okay, so yeah, definitely more forgiving.
Forgiving, I think, in the sense, I think it's getting bombed by like the jokesters, the hucksters, who's who. Those
clowns.
They're loving it ironically. That's all it really is. I think that's my theory.
Maybe, yeah.
And then I don't know if we have a cinema score. Oh, we do. Look at that. Okay, cinema score, Relation. What do you got?
Is it like a C?
No, it's an A minus.
Really? Is that right?
Yeah, it genuinely is. I'm double checking the Wikipedia page to be like, all right, am I really on Killers of a Flower Moon? Like, what are we? No, yeah, A minus. That's that thing like that.
Far.
And then we'll finish it out with Letterboxd. Now, the Letterboxd is kind of unbelievable. 402,000 watches.
I told you, man. Like, people, the kids are watching this.
Look, I'm here. We are talking about this movie right now. And you want to shame me and call me names? All right. Also, not just 402,000 watches, Will. 109,000 hearts, likes.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah. So that said, What is the average rating for this?
Is it like 3.5?
It is 2.6.
Oh, okay.
This was a tough one. I feel like that's a hard one to guess after all of that, huh?
Yeah.
I mean, look, I'm looking at like the people I follow who watch it. A lot of people watched it who I follow, and it's a who's who of like, did they give it a 1 star or a 2 star? Like that's kind of where I'm at here, and I can't say that I'm terribly surprised. I see one person gave it 4.5 because that's their right as an American.
Sure.
And one person gave it 3.5. And that actually is a little bit more surprising because they're like a bona fide like critic person, but I'm not their parent.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I could see this one being claimed by a younger generation. Maybe, I don't know. I think it's going to be one of those movies. Like, I don't know. If the younger generation does claim it, it'll be, I don't know, like a Goonies kind of thing. Even though I do like Goonies, from what I've been told, if you watch it as an adult, you're like, well, oh, this wasn't very good. It seemed scarier as a kid.
Yeah, I definitely haven't seen it since I was like 10. Too long now. My time with it has long passed. That's Five Nights at Freddy's, and we have been debating what we're going to talk about next on the show. It is awards season. Now, look, there are a few movies that I think we both would like to talk about. We'll start with that. There's The Killer, which I think is going to be streaming on Netflix, I think tomorrow. So we're recording this November 9th. So that is an option.
Yes.
I loved The Killer. I shouldn't say loved. I really, really enjoyed it. I thought it was pretty great. There's also The Holdovers, which I'm hoping to see this weekend. And I know if you want to see it. Yeah, I mean, look, that's pure hype. I just feel like both of us have been like, let's go, like been waiting for this one. And then it just in terms of stuff that we're interested in, there's plenty of like releases. All of Us Strangers, I just saw it, and I don't know. It might not actually be till December till we can get to that one because I don't know if it's going to be. The release I think is a little later, huh?
I do have a screening for that next week, so I guess we could do it early if you wanted to, but.
So it depends. I mean, it kind of depends on our holiday coverage and what we want to do there. But yeah, the big release is going to be the Marvels. Now, as we speak, people are at the Thursday previews. We don't know how it's going to do box office wise. I don't think it's going to be tracking pretty well. I think it's
tracking to be like 45, maybe less million.
That's pretty bad. I think that it's probably going to not do great. I think a lot of people are kind of like with like Marvel in general right now anyway, unless it's like a pretty established thing. And I think Captain Marvel is like not like a big box office draw, and people will look and they're like, well, this is a big failure because the first Captain Marvel made $1 billion, and it's like it did, but it was kind of because it was like in between Infinity War and Endgame. It was kind of teased as like a bridge between those movies. It's like, okay, it's a little bit of a different story, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, and it was also kind of like, I don't know, I guess it was kind of riding the high of something like Wonder Woman. Like we were finally getting a female-led, comic book movie from Marvel and all this stuff. And I don't know. It does seem like the rose is off the bloom a little bit as far as
a lot of stuff has happened since, basically. That said, I mean, look, I thought it was quite good fun. I think that Brie Larson continues to not really be that compelling of a superhero actor, just in general. I think she's okay, but like honestly, like this is Iman Vellani's movie. Like she plays Miss Marvel, and I know you're kind of joking earlier. We were kind of like, well, I have to watch like a whole show. It's like, fine, don't watch the Marvels, but I would tell anybody who is like kind of like at least likes Marvel stuff generally that Miss Marvel is one of the better things that they've done in like the last several years. I thought the show was very good, and a lot of it's because like she's just like a really like charismatic and great performer. Now, I don't say that as a way of like to recommend it to you, Will, because I don't think it's really your thing. Sure. Like, I don't think like that show is something that you're going to be like, I'm glad, you got other stuff to get to, right? You're a busy man.
Yeah, I mean, with that one, I mean, I'm not, as far as Miss Marvel goes, I feel it's like kind of the same for me as like Olivia Rodrigo music, where it's like, I'm sure it's nice and fine, but I'm not the intended audience for it. So I'm not really, I'm not. teenage girl.
And that's better than like trying to force yourself to be, I think.
Sure.
That can be kind of weird when people do that.
But it does seem like she, even just watching the trailers, like her, personality and then her charisma, as you're mentioning, really does seem to shine in a way that's like, okay, it's clear why Marvel had so much faith in her. Maybe, assuming that Miss Marvel, the show, would be a bigger deal than it became. But that's really.
I mean, the show did pretty well. It was a critical hit, and a lot of people watched it. I don't know what you're talking about.
No, I don't know. I feel like WandaVision is like the only Marvel show I know people watched.
No, WandaVision and Loki are two of the bigger ones. Miss Marvel is up there too. I'd say that Miss Marvel, I think, is like probably behind Loki. I think the ones that have been like bona fide, like kind of disasters have been like Moon Knight, and I think What If didn't do super, super well. And I think like She-Hulk and She-Hulk definitely was kind of on the middle there. It's like it had some interest, but it really dropped off. And then I think one of the bigger misses was Captain America and Falcon and Winter Soldier. That one kind of like had way higher expectations. Hawkeye was just kind of like okay of a hit. So no, I would push back there, and I'd say that Miss Marvel's kind of like in the top 3. Not that it's like a very contestable list that you want to be on, a prestigious list.
I just mean in terms of like making any cultural impact. I feel. I
mean that too.
I don't know. I mean, I guess we'll just have to agree to disagree on that one.
But that's the thing. I think you kind of disconnected from Marvel by the time.
Maybe.
Like by the time we hit 2022, I feel like you were kind of like out of the. Just I noticed to me there was a very notable difference between the conversations or lack thereof during Miss Marvel, Moon Knight, and those shows, like because they were around the same time, and She-Hulk too.
I did watch a little bit of She-Hulk. I guess I should mention that as far as my Marvel awareness. But yeah, I mean, once they started establishing that I had to watch Disney Plus shows, that's when I kind of tuned out.
Yeah. That's all right, because we'll be able to talk about other stuff. And literally as we speak, there's a new Loki show, and I haven't seen any of it. Secret Invasion, I didn't even mention that one.
I mentioned that. I guess you didn't hear me, but yeah.
Oh, I didn't hear you. But and will, I mean, is it possible that we talk about The Curse on Cinemaholics?
We did talk about The Rehearsal, so I'm not opposed.
I mean, yeah. I mean, that starts up this weekend, so it's gonna be on Paramount Plus, and we both have Paramount Plus. So, I mean, that's my pitch.
Yeah, but there's also Anatomy of a Fall and Priscilla as well. So,
yeah, Priscilla is the one that. Look, there are just a few screenings I missed. That's what it comes down to, and I do really want to see Priscilla. And Anatomy of the Fall, I am going to see. I have to see it, and so it's just a matter of when.
At the very least, though, you can see that there's all these things, and then you're saying, but Marvels.
Yeah. Because I had fun at the Marvels. I think it was a funny movie. It's a good time.
All right, well, that was Five Nights at Freddy's.
Thanks for listening, and we'll be back next week or whenever you hear us. See y'all next time. From the Internet California, I'm John Negroni.
And for the Internet Pennsylvania, I'm Washington.
Bye.
Bye-bye.